the book originally started out as a journal. It originally started out as me just journaling my own thoughts, and I realized I have a lot to say. And I was when I kind of decided to turn it into the book, because early on in the recovery, it was really hard to find anything positive. Everything that I, especially about brain aneurysm, everything that I could find to read was really scary and negative. I couldn't find anything positive, really. And so the book was sort of my effort as well. I wish there was something like this available for me when I was going through it.
This is the Recovery After Stroke podcast with Bill Gassiamis, helping you navigate recovery after stroke.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Recovery After Stroke podcast. Thanks to all the listeners who went along and have already left the show a 5-star review. It's really heartwarming to see and read the many positive comments about what the show means to you, and it makes spending a lot of time putting each episode together so very worthwhile. Now, I want to share a couple of the reviews left recently by a couple of listeners. Scam Destroyer left a review which says, "Such a huge help. This is so far the most helpful podcast regarding stroke recovery and better healthy living. So much appreciation for this. Thank you. Thank you." Well, thank you, Scam Destroyer. I really appreciate the feedback, and I'm glad that you're getting a lot out of the episodes. Shannon Lavery also left a review and said, "Such a great resource. Thank you for having this podcast and for all those on the show who are courageously sharing their stories and making a difference through education and connecting." And that's exactly why I did this podcast. I set it up because I wanted to connect with other people, learn from them, and hopefully impart some of my knowledge on them as well. So yeah, it's a really amazing thing to read all the reviews. They're making a huge difference, and they're making the show more visible to people who are looking for this kind of content. Now, also thank you to the person who left me a 1-star review without a comment. That's really curious as to why this particular podcast might deserve a 1-star review. I never expected it, but everybody's different, so fair enough. And the majority of the reviews are fantastic, so it really makes up for it, and it's all good. Now, this is episode 195, and my guest today is 2-time stroke survivor, Jason De Petris. Not only did Jason experience a stroke because of a brain aneurysm, about 9 months after the first incident, he experienced an ischemic stroke caused by a previously undiagnosed genetic condition that makes him more susceptible to clotting of the blood. Now, recently, Jason launched his book, Be Here Now, and has joined me on the podcast to chat about his journey so far and how his book came to be. Jason De Petris, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. Good to be here.
You know, you were on episode 110 previously, and that's more than 80 episodes ago.
Wow.
And it's about a year and a half ago. It doesn't feel that long since we last spoke. And I've been following your progress on Instagram. And I'm really excited to be able to share a follow-up interview with a stroke survivor and really dive into the before, which was a year and a half ago when we first spoke, and now, and give people a good insight into what happens or what's possible or what occurs in that time after stroke, and how long things take to happen, or how far you get. So can you give the people listening, the ones that haven't listened to episode 110 yet, give us a little bit of an insight into what it was that brought you and me together? What happened to you?
Yeah, it's interesting you say it was only a year and a half ago. It feels like a lifetime has passed during that year and a half. So yeah, just a brief timeline. In October of 2019, I experienced an ischemic stroke. It was the day before I was scheduled to run the Chicago Marathon. I was in Chicago, and luckily the stroke occurred before the race, not during the race. While having breakfast in a restaurant, I had a stroke, was rushed to the hospital. when they did a CT scan to confirm their suspicion that I was having a stroke, they discovered a large brain aneurysm behind my right eye. And basically I was told this aneurysm needs to be repaired yesterday. And so once I was in the hospital for a week or so. Once it was safe for me to travel home, I came back to California. I did, after lots of testing and conversations, I had a cerebral bypass in California, which entails taking an artery from my arm, grafting one end of it onto my carotid artery, a full craniotomy. They opened up my skull, grafted the other end in my brain. That surgery was unsuccessful for a variety of reasons. I was on the operating table more than double the amount of time I was supposed to be. I had a seizure during the operation, almost didn't survive the operation. And when I finally woke up, I was told, oh yeah, and that operation didn't work. So 32 days after that, I went to a different hospital in California, and I had a stent and coiling of the aneurysm. And recovery was progressing nicely. I think somewhere in that timeline was when I connected with you over Instagram, and you allowed me to be on the podcast. It was kind of mid-recovery, if I remember correctly. And then about 9 months after the first stroke, I experienced a second stroke. And after a lot of testing, they did just about every kind of test that you can imagine to figure out why I had the second stroke, because as far as everybody knew, including the doctors, my healing was progressing normally. All of that testing led them to discover that I have a genetic condition related to my bone marrow that makes me extra prone to clotting. And so essentially what happened was, and we didn't know that I had that condition. There was no reason to think that I had that or to test for that if the second stroke hadn't happened. So essentially what happened was the stent that had been placed in the aneurysm clotted and blocked. And through a very strange twist of fate, the bypass that originally had not been successful, originally hadn't worked, when I had the second stroke, it started working. Essentially, as I understand it, the stent clotted up, was blocked, the blood had nowhere else to go, and so it forced its way through the bypass, which up until then had been useless. So ironically, that bypass that we thought was not successful probably saved my life. That's probably why I survived the second stroke.
So I'm not laughing. You know, that's that nervous kind of weird, strange thing that happens when people hear something like that. And then they realize the complete ridiculousness of what you just said. And then it's also amazing that you just said that and that you're here this much time later. And what you're going to share today is going to be amazing. It's going to be the amazing kind of what's possible after all of this drama that occurs. You know, these are the notes that I had on your original podcast. Was I had the notes where you spoke about you kind of avoided or didn't recognize the signs of stroke. You were saved by a stroke. You were definitely worried about deficits and concerned about what you might have to recover from or deal with. You were dealing with uncertainty of exactly that second stroke or another stroke and what life's going to be like. You know, at some point you started to take responsibility for your recovery, and you started dealing with your emotions, which is very common, a common thing that comes up. You changed your diet, and then we spoke about Be Here Now, which is your whole kind of philosophy now, your Instagram, it's your book, it's everything, you know, that kind of you've built. It sounds like it's the topic or it's the way of being that you're building your life around, you know.
Absolutely.
So I think most people who listen to this podcast, caregivers or stroke survivors, and the ones who watch on YouTube, will relate to all those things that you said. They'll relate to all those issues, concerns, and everything that you said. And what they often don't get is this whole, especially if they're very early on and they find the podcast early on in their stroke experience or recovery, they need somebody to ease their mind. And that's what the whole purpose of the podcast is. Hopefully it does that and then some, you know, it eases the mind.
Right.
How did you start to notice that even though you were worried about deficits and even though you were dealing with uncertainty, how did they take like a step back from being at the front of your mind? Because I'm feeling like you're not at that place now.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And it's interesting you say that you're feeling like I'm not in that place. I mean, I definitely have my moments. Ironically, and I still kind of struggle to figure out where this has gone mentally. Ironically, the second stroke, I mean, when it happened, when the second stroke occurred, I mean, it was my worst fears. It was basically confirmation of everything I had been afraid of. And I was shocked, along with a lot of other emotions. And in the days and weeks after the second stroke, that was some of the darkest moments I've ever had. But when I climbed out of that, which happened thankfully relatively quickly, it almost gave me this gift, so to speak, of I wish it hadn't happened, but when the second stroke happened, I sort of realized, I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to live my life in fear. I'm not going to spend all of my energy being afraid of what might or might not happen, because that was kind of proof to me that you can do everything right. You can eat healthy, you can be fit, you can exercise, you can take all your medications, you can follow all the doctor's orders, and it can still happen. And if that's the case, if you can do everything right and tick all the boxes and you can still have another stroke, well, then there's no point in me worrying about it all the time. Like I'm going to live my life. And so that was a weird sort of positive thing that came out of it. I don't know if that's going to make sense to people, but
It makes sense to me. It's the whole, okay, I'll be blunt. We're all going to die. It's no matter what happens, we're all going to die. That's where we're headed. Instead of being afraid of death, which is stopping you from living your life, it's not embrace death, but it's like accept that that's where we're heading and just embrace life. Embrace the opportunity to live fully as much as you can, and then you'll have no regrets if the inevitable comes sooner rather than later, or whatever that is. We don't know. And just because you've had 1 and 2 strokes doesn't mean the third one has to be the worst one or the one that gives you death. It just is another one that you got to recover from. It may not mean anything. So let's not necessarily apply meaning to what anything may mean. I had the first stroke, then I had a second one, then I had a third one. 3 times there were bleeds in the brain from an AVM. And not once did I fear the fourth one or the third one or the second one. I never feared them. I kind of accepted early on that I'm going to make the most of whatever happens after that. I'm just going to make the most of it. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm not going to predetermine in my head and make myself the block to me living the proper life. I had done that before stroke. Before stroke, I was the guy that had all the reasons why life wasn't possible to live the way that I wanted it to. I'm not doing that now.
Yeah.
So
no, I absolutely get what you're saying, and again, I wish the second stroke hadn't happened, but
of course,
I almost feel like it gave me that gift, because I had been sort of saying be here now, and I've been preaching be here now. Now I get it. Now it's like all the more reason to live in the moment. And another piece, which maybe I'm skipping ahead here, but the second stroke happened 3 days after I finished writing the rough draft of my book. I had finished the book. I'd finished the first draft. 3 days later, I had the second stroke.
wow.
So
Wow. So tell me, what is Be Here Now, the concept? What does it embody? Tell me.
Um, it's it's all about, for me, it's all about living in the present moment. That's being here, present, mentally, physically, spiritually, however you want to look at it. Being present in the present moment, not worrying about what happened in the past, not regretting what I have or haven't done, or what has or hasn't happened, and not um, ruminating on the future, what may or may not happen. It's all about living in the moment right here. When the first incident happened, when I was in Chicago to run the marathon, I was there with my best friend that I had grown up with. We no longer live in the same part of the United States, but we grew up together since birth. And we spent a lot of time talking about my anxiety after the first stroke. And she has a phrase that she uses called future tripping, meaning, she's like, oh, you're future tripping again. Like, I would go off, and my mind would spin on these, oh, well, what if this, what if that, what if this? And she kept saying future tripping, which really stuck in my head. And I was like, I need to stop doing that. I need to be here. I need to be right here for this moment. That's where that comes from.
I love that, because anxiety is exactly that. It's worrying about something that hasn't happened yet,
Yeah.
that you're expecting to happen. And
Yep.
if you get good at worrying about things that haven't happened yet, you can come up with freaking endless number of things to worry about that haven't happened yet. And what we know is that 95 or more percent of the things that we worry about don't actually ever happen.
Mhm.
And what we're doing is putting energy into trying to avoid something that's we don't need to avoid. We actually don't need to avoid it.
Well, and really, when you do that, and I find that concept translates to so many areas of my life. I mean, obviously my recovery, but everything else too, into my business, into my marathon running, which I'm fortunate to have recovered enough that I can do that again. It translates to all of that. It's if I'm worrying in my business, I have a small business. If I'm worrying about, oh my gosh, well, what if this, what if that, what if this, my business appointments that I have right now are not going to go well, because I'm not in it. My mind's not in it. If I'm running a race, if I'm running a marathon or a half marathon, and I'm like worrying about, oh, I still have 9 more miles to run, I'm not focusing on what I'm doing, and I'm less likely to do a good job. I'm less like, you know what I mean? So it just translates to everything.
Imagine people that are listening and watching. Imagine um, Jason and I are having a conversation, and all of a sudden I pick up my phone and I start checking my messages or my notifications, right? And what's happening is Jason's going on his merry way and talking about his book and his experience and all that kind of stuff, and I'm not there. You don't
Yeah.
want to be that guy. You don't want to be the guy that picks up the phone and starts checking notifications and starts doing things like that while the other person is engaged, because your mind is worrying about the future or
Hmm.
expecting some notification to come or whatever. It's
Yeah.
like you're the worst person to be around as well, and you just haven't and you may not have realized like how much you impact the other person that's with you in the room, at the cafe, at the kitchen table, wherever they are. You're not realizing how much you're impacting them in a negative way by not being able to just ease your mind about stuff that you can't control, and just being in the moment and enjoying every single moment of that interaction with that person. That's kind of my way to bring attention or give people an idea of what that looks like. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
looks like as if I did that to Jason right now. I mean, that'd be
It's like you're doing
ridiculous.
that to your own life. I mean, that's a really good analogy,
Yeah,
because everybody's been across the table from somebody who was checking their phone.
yeah,
But it's like you're doing that same thing that person with the phone is doing to you. You're doing that to your life,
yeah.
if you're, you know what I mean?
To
So
yourself. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So then you've come out of hospital and you've written a rough draft. And what were you thinking at the time? Because at that moment, what were you thinking about? Like all the steps that you had taken and all the the things that you had achieved to that point, and now you're dealing with another stroke. It did turn out to be a blessing in disguise, but what were you thinking right at that moment about the book and releasing it and all that stuff?
Well, okay, so I'm gonna go a little bit before the book, and I'll tell you just in the immediate moment when the second stroke happened. um, I knew exactly what was happening. So the first stroke, I didn't know what was happening. I didn't realize I was having a stroke. When the second stroke happened, I knew exactly what was happening because it felt, looked, sounded, it was identical to the first one. So I knew exactly what was happening. And it was absolutely terrifying because I thought, okay, I dodged a bullet the first time. What is this one going to do to me? And it was absolutely terrifying. Um, and I was in intensive care for I forget how many days. And it was right in the middle of the pandemic, so nobody could visit me. I mean, I basically waved goodbye to my spouse from the curb as the ambulance drove away. So that was really rough. The first couple of weeks after that stroke were really rough. I was in a very, very dark place because I was thinking, is this what my life is now? And when am I going to recover from this one this time? And the deficits were, I've been lucky with both strokes. My deficits are relatively minor, but they were made worse by the second stroke. And so I thought, okay, am I going to recover from this? And then getting back to the book, when it became clear that I was recovering and I was going to kind of bounce back, then I thought, well, what do I do about the book? I just finished the book. I ended the book on a very positive note. I was very happy with the way it ended. And I thought, well, what do I do now? Do I include anything? Do I add something to the end? Do I tell people that I had the second stroke? Does that negate all the positivity that I was trying to build up to in the book? And I ultimately decided I have to include it. I have to say something because if the book is all about recovery, recovery is ugly. Recovery doesn't happen the way you want it to. It's not linear. It's not clean. It's not, you know, sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. So I thought, if I'm going to publish this book, I got to be honest. I have to say what actually happened. So I did decide ultimately to talk about the second stroke.
And you added that to the end of the book, so to speak, was it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Uh, it's already the second iteration of the book, and the book hasn't even come out yet. It's usually you hear about somebody releases their book and then they update it 5, 6, 10 years down the road, and they tell you
Yeah.
there's a recently updated version and it goes out. You did that all in one go. How does your partner deal with the second stroke? What is going on there?
Gosh, I mean, yeah, that's a hard one to answer. So I can't even imagine what was going on in my family's mind when this was happening because, like I said, it was in the middle. It was in July of 2021, so it was at the height, at least in Los Angeles. It was at the height of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So I was allowed no visitors in the hospital. So I'm sure they were, I was so focused on my own
Yeah.
nonsense at that time, but I'm sure it was rough. And up to that point, he had been such a constant caregiver, and I'm sure it was like, oh, here we go again. Yeah, and I was not in a good place mentally when I came out of the hospital after that. It's like I was not in a good place mentally. I was really, I wouldn't. The whole poor me thing didn't last very long because that's just not really my personality. That didn't last very long. I came out of that pretty quickly. The feeling sorry for myself, but I was in a very negative headspace. And it set off a whole another spiral of anxiety, which took a while to gain control of. So yeah, I'm sure I was not fun to be around for a while there.
Yeah. And we're going to give you a bit of a break for that. We're going to give you a little bit of a break and say, look, your head's been messed up because of this thing that happened, and it's second time, and it's like, yeah, fair enough. And some self-compassion in that moment when people are doing it tough because they've been through a really tough time is really important. I was pretty terrible as well in my behavior to my wife, and I was no saint beforehand, but I was like a little bit next level idiotic, and it was really important for me to just realize that I didn't need to beat myself up about that. And I needed to then apologize about that. Part of not beating myself up about it was that I could make it right by apologizing.
Yeah.
And by trying to be the best I could be most of the time. But I'm human and most of us are. So we're going to act up and misbehave and also have negative thoughts and also have positive ones, and then be balanced and then be completely unbalanced and nuts. And that's all normal, that's part of us. Now our spouses, well, that's how they normally are, but then they're dealing it from their filter of this person I love nearly died or might have died or whatever. And it's completely, again, different level of experiencing us because they want to make sure that we're okay, caring for us and the rest of it. And maybe they're getting frustrated and they don't know how to help and how to be, because they're not caregivers. They're humans who are moments before the strokes were just normal, regular people. And now they've got to be caregivers. They've got to know everything about stroke and how to deal with their own emotions as well as help you out of it. And it's like so much to ask of them.
It really is. It is a lot to ask. And I think, and Jeremy and I have had many conversations about this, about how, obviously he knows more about the situation and more about how I feel about it than most people do, but I don't care how close you are to the person. Like I don't care how much you think you understand, you don't. Unless you're the patient and you went through it. I don't care how much you think you understand, you don't completely understand. And that can be frustrating from the patient side as well, especially because stroke, it is a brain injury, and it does affect your emotions, and it does affect certain things, and it is, from what I understand, it is common after a stroke to have a short temper and to get irritated quickly and get anxious easily. And I definitely exhibited those symptoms, and I definitely would bite his head off when I shouldn't have. So yeah, it's a really tough position for a caregiver to be in.
Yeah. My heart goes out to all the caregivers and the family members and the loved ones. It does. And it goes out to the stroke survivors as well. There's no doubt about it. No one's winning out of those experiences at that time, in that moment, at the most acute phase of the experience, and then the very early start parts of the recovery. No one is equipped enough to handle it all and to be perfectly fine. And that's part of our growth and our learning, right? What's really, really interesting to me is the amount of stroke survivors that have gone from that experience and then gone, you know what, I'm going to learn, grow from this, and then I'm going to tell everyone else about this, as many people as I can, and I'm going to reach them as much as I can. And I was even shocked that I did it myself, that I started a podcast. And looking back on it, I don't even know how I got to here and what I was thinking, other than I think I need to share stories or learn from people or something, and I need to create a community for me. And it then became about other people. And it's like, it's an amazing thing that I reflect on that I did, and I never was that way before. I never was that generous with giving my time and my knowledge, How do you get to that point where you have a stroke, the first one, and then you think, I'm going to write a book about this? What happened?
If you've had a stroke and you're in recovery, you'll know what a scary and confusing time it can be. you're likely to have a lot of questions going through your mind. Like, how long will it take to recover? Will I actually recover? What things should I avoid in case I make matters worse? Doctors will explain things, but obviously you've never had a stroke before. You probably don't know what questions to ask. If this is you, you may be missing out on doing things that could help speed up your recovery. If you're finding yourself in that situation, stop worrying and head to recoveryafterstroke.com, where you can download a guide that will help you. It's called 7 Questions to Ask Your Doctor About Your Stroke. These 7 questions are the ones Bill wished he'd asked when he was recovering from a stroke. They'll not only help you better understand your condition, they'll help you take a more active role in your recovery. Head to the website now, recoveryafterstroke.com, and download the guide. It's free.
The book originally started out as a journal for me. It originally started out as me just journaling my own thoughts, and I realized I have a lot to say. When I kind of decided to turn it into the book, because early on in the recovery, it was really hard to find anything positive. Everything that I, especially about brain aneurysm, everything that I could find to read was really scary and negative. I couldn't find anything positive, really. And so the book was sort of my effort as, well, I wish there was something like this available for me when I was going through it. And I don't know if you, Bill, have experienced this, but I know I'm so in the thick of it, I forget how crazy my story is sometimes until I'm introduced to somebody new and it comes up, and I try not to make that the first thing I talk about, but it comes up, and I forget how extreme my story is until I'm telling somebody who hasn't heard it before, and I see their face change, and they're like, "Holy crap!" And they're fascinated. They always want to know more. They have more questions. They want to know more. So I thought, well, and I very, very often get the question, well, what is a brain aneurysm? I've heard that term, but they don't know what it is. So that it kind of came out of all of that. It was kind of me getting my thoughts out. It was me thinking, God, I wish there was something that could give some people a path through the recovery or something positive. And it was, hey, people want to know about this, especially if they're going to have to be a caregiver or whatever. So it was kind of a combination of all those.
Yeah. I get the opportunity to share my story once a year with the 3rd-year occupational therapy students at the Australian Catholic University here in Melbourne, as part of one of the modules that they're doing, which is in stroke recovery. So occupational therapy as a support tool for stroke survivors. Mm-hmm. And and every time the professor who invites me to speak there, or doctor, I think she's a doctor. Anyway, when we first started, she was just somebody that was there. Now she's moved through the ranks and become either a doctor or a professor. I've known her for about 7 or 8 years. And every time she says to me, "Oh my gosh, I learned something new that I didn't know since the last time you told the story." What it is always it's one of those shocking moments or amazing moments or fantastic moments. And I didn't realize there's so many of them that are littered in the story.
Yeah.
And it's what you said, is they come out every once in a while.
Right.
And it's like, wow, gosh, that also happened. And then you realize, oh, what a dramatic roller coaster ride it has been, and how much you've overcome to get to the other side. It's what you're talking about, right? It's like you've overcome the dramatic dips. And my experience was the high highs, very high highs. And I was never really at the middle ground for a long time. Yeah. Afterwards, it took a while to get to the smooth end of the roller coaster ride, which was as it takes off or as it ends. And there's just a very small amount of time of that. Is that what you felt as well? Is that your take?
Yeah, that's very similar to what I felt. And I feel like I'm just now, it's interesting that we're reconnecting now, because I feel like I'm just now kind of settling into that middle. Like I feel the most like myself, so to speak, that I have felt since this journey began. For a long time, I felt like, I mean, the easiest way I could think of to describe it was I didn't recognize my life. And I feel like I'm just now, within the last couple of months, I feel like myself again. And with some positive improvements, I hope. But I have found joy again, because this was not a fun process, as you know.
Mm.
And there was a lot of time, there was a lot of the journey where I was just unhappy and angry.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even really like, why did this happen to me? Bad stuff happens to people all the time.
Mm.
It wasn't even really like, why me? It was more like, I got to deal with this crap now. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I feel like I'm out of that now. I feel like I've cleared that cleared that hill.
Yeah. So I had a lot of joyful moments at the very beginning. They sort of kept coming, maybe because of my tendency to focus on the positive and see light where there's a lot of darkness. So that's just me. That's just who I've always been. And my experience with stroke 1, 2, and 3, and then brain surgery, that was over 3.5 years. By the time I got out of recovery and finished outpatient occupational therapy and rehabilitation, it was nearly 4 years. It was definitely 3.5 years. So it took a really long time for me to start to feel like myself again.
Hmm.
After the rehabilitation ended, I kind of sort of started going back to my regular life, but it was a lot of interruptions with hospital visits. Or because I'm having a major headache, or I don't know what it is. I'm afraid it might be a stroke. Let's not
Hmm.
muck around and just go and get it checked out. Although the surgery removed the blood vessel that was potentially going to bleed,
Yeah.
I still had all that stuff to do. And I was still in these weird twilight zone places in my head where I couldn't really grasp the the reality of where I was. Like I was just in this weird sort of haze of fog and strange places.
Hmm.
And it took about 8 years since the first stroke for me to start to feel like myself again,
Hmm.
properly, fully, even with my deficits, even with my left side numbness and
Yeah.
my wonky balance when I get too tired, and my
Hmm.
inability to concentrate a lot after, say, 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I still, even with those things, start to feel, I'm still feeling like I'm the most quote unquote myself that I've ever been.
Yeah.
And I say that because what I want to demonstrate is, for you, you got there after about, 2 years to somewhere there. I got there
Yeah.
after 8 years. It
Yeah.
takes different amount of time for different people.
Yeah.
The key part of the story is we get there. Everyone kind of does
Yeah.
get there in this new way, and they
Yeah.
they start to they start to upgrade their identity, even though they've had a stroke. Stroke is not their only identity. They start to add all the layers back into their identity that they've been
Yeah.
missing, or they've been put on hold, or they put to the side for the moment where they were really unwell.
Yeah. No, that's true. And I think you bring up a really good point there, where the stroke is not your identity. It's one thing that happened to you in your life, but it's not your identity. And I relate it back to, in a previous career, I used to be a special education teacher. And it's always been a pet peeve of mine. You commonly hear, and it's not, people don't mean this in a negative way, but you hear people say, "Oh, that Downs kid, or so and so has a Downs kid," and that was always a pet peeve of mine. I was always like, "Well, no, it's a kid who has Down syndrome. It's not a Downs kid." Because you're reducing that person, you're reducing their entire identity to that one
Mm,
element. And it's the
mm,
same kind of thing. It's like, I'm not a stroke patient. I'm somebody who had a stroke.
once,
I'm
twice,
starting
3 times in the past.
right, and I'm starting to find my identity again outside of that one thing that happened or two things that happened.
Yeah, I really love that what you said, because I'm a stroke survivor, not a stroke victim, and a lot of the people that we interact with on Instagram and through the podcast, and you who you'll start interacting with through the book, often are referred to by other people as stroke victims
Mm-hmm.
or stroke patients, but the stroke survivor, I think, is something that the that we take and run with. That's something that we identify with, that we describe ourselves as, and it's really empowering. The first person to tell me that was my counselor after episode number 2. And she leaned in and said, "You know what you are now?" I said, "No, I don't know what I am." She said, "You're a stroke survivor. You can start using that label." And I didn't realize what she was saying, what she was doing. I know now.
Yeah.
But that was a really empowering description of me. And I think it was a real big key to the way that I then went about relaying my story to people and actually turning it into a positive, and then getting them to do the whole, what you experienced, the whole wow, or amazing, or that's unbelievable.
Well, and words matter. I mean, words do matter. The way you choose to express it does make a difference in how you see yourself. I mean, obviously, it makes a difference in the way that other people see you too, but more importantly, I think it makes a difference in how we see ourselves, the way you choose to express that story or not.
Yeah. So going forward, what's how are you managing uh the condition that you discovered after the second bleed? How is the medical world and you managing that?
That's been a little bit of a journey in itself. So I'll tell you what I know about the condition, but I'll start by saying I don't know a lot about the condition. One of the things that Jeremy, my spouse, laughs about a little bit is I'm not interested in doing a lot of technical research on my conditions. It was bad enough to live through it. I want to get through it and move on. So I kind of take the attitude, for good or bad or whatever. I take the attitude, okay, doctors, tell me what I need to do. I'll follow your orders, but I'm not going to sit here and read the textbook. I frankly don't care. Like, tell me what I need to do to not die, and I'll do it. So I don't know a ton about the condition. As I understand it, it is a genetic condition in my bone marrow that, the way it was explained to me, I think what happens is my bone marrow doesn't know when to stop producing red blood cells. It just continues producing. So I clot over very easily. And that condition is most frequently seen in patients who have either leukemia or sickle cell anemia. So the treatment for that condition is a medication that is technically, it's a form of chemotherapy. It's a pill. I don't get infusions or injections or anything like that. It's a pill. And it's a mild chemotherapy, but technically it's chemotherapy. I mean, it says on the pill bottle, do not handle these pills with your bare hands. So it's a very harsh medication, and it does have side effects. It took over a year for the doctor to adjust, to get the dosage right. When they first put me on that medication, I was going every 2 weeks. I was going for blood tests every 2 weeks, and it was because it was throwing all of my levels off, and it was created some unpleasant side effects. We now have it at a level that I'm stable. But yeah, I'll have to be on that medication or some version of it for the rest of my life.
And it's not something that's able to be impacted by blood thinners or anything like that, because it's not that type of condition.
Correct. So I do take aspirin, which I guess is technically a blood thinner, but I'm not on a blood thinner medication. I take aspirin, and then I take the medication for that other condition.
Yeah. It sounds like the aspirin is kind of the sort of support mechanism to help the blood flow a little better, therefore reduce the possibility again of potential
Yes.
clots or anything like that.
That's my understanding. But like I said, I mean, my understanding, I mean, I go to a cancer doctor, I go to an oncologist for that condition. I don't have cancer,
Yeah.
which when they first told me we're going to put you on this medication, I was a little alarmed because we looked it up and I was like, that's a cancer medication. I do not have cancer, but it's because of the nature of my condition. That's the medication that's used for it. But I haven't researched it much more than that. I go to the doctor. I love my oncologist. She's great. She really explained things in a way that I can understand, and I don't ask beyond that because I'm like, well, I just want to live my life.
That's so good. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I totally get it. I'm the opposite. I need to know all the gory details.
Yeah.
And it just what that does is it gives me the same experience that you get. It allows me to live my life.
Yeah.
So weird ways, completely different ways of getting to the same outcome.
Yeah.
But then what I think about is if I know every single thing that there is to know, then I know what I need to do. Then I have all the information that I need to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
So I just need to go a bit deeper than you, but you seem like you have all the information that you need to do what you need to do next, which is perfect.
That's interesting because I can absolutely see from your side, I can absolutely see how that would accomplish the same thing for somebody. I think for me, with my, I have a tendency towards anxiety anyway, even before, obviously it was made worse by the stroke, but I have a tendency in that direction anyway. So I think with my personality, if I spent too much time and energy researching it, I think what that's going to do is give me a whole bunch of other reasons to be scared.
Right.
So for me, I'm like, just tell me what I need to do and I'll do it.
Nice. I like that. You've worked out how to hack your anxiety and don't go there. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a great skill. I mean, to know what not to do. Okay, so first, like now you know what to do to stay alive, and now you also know what not to do to trigger anxiety for no reason.
Exactly. I mean, if there's anything that I've learned from this experience, it's I've learned about my own personality. So,
Everyone else knew your personality and they judged you because of it, and you just worked it out. How old are you?
44.
Yeah, I love it. Better late than never, huh?
Yeah.
Have you got a copy of the book with you?
I do.
Show us. Put it up in front of the camera. Okay. It's Be Here Now by Jason De Petris, Surviving Stroke and Brain Aneurysm.
Yes.
Brilliant. It's an awesome cover. I love the image of the head and the brain and the tree all combined. How did you come up with that image? Is that an image that you just came across, or did somebody design that for you? And what does it mean to you?
So my one of my business clients actually is a graphic designer, and I've gotten to be friends with him over the years, and he's done a lot of graphics for my business. So I immediately, and he's also a visual artist outside of his graphic design business. Excuse me, and I've always loved his art. And so I told him I was doing the book, and I said I would like to hire you to design the cover, and he was like, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so he did that for me.
And did you have to give him a lot of guidance on how to come up with that image? Because that's a pretty unique image.
No, I mean, he gave me, I think, like 12 or 13 potential options for the cover, and they were all very, very different. And that we narrowed it down to like 2 or 3, and that was the one that I picked. The other one, the other image that I liked was it was an image of the back. It was an image you were looking at the back of somebody, and his head was sort of opening up and there was light coming out of it. And I thought it was a really cool image, but the reason I chose not to do that one was it was like a shirtless man and he was really buff. And I said, well, that's a cool image, but I look nothing like that. And I was like, if I make that the cover of my own book, people are gonna be like, well, you have a high opinion of yourself. So So I was like, no, let's not do that. Let's not try and pretend that the cover is me. Let's just have like a, more of an artistic image.
Right. So does it say anything to you? Did it speak to you in a particular way? Did you interpret that image as something um, that therefore made it the perfect image?
Yes, I love the fact that the head is sort of blowing away in the wind, because that to me is like, you do when you go through something like this. Obviously, I've gained a lot from this, but initially it feels like you're losing a lot. It feels like you're losing a piece of your life, and that's what that image looks like to me.
Yeah. You're losing a bit of your life. You're losing some of the not so good stuff, the bad stuff, or you're losing some of the good stuff as well in that whole thing. What are some of the things that have how has your life changed? Has it taken away some good things? Did it kind of give you like an insight into some of the stuff that you didn't like? What did it do, this whole stroke experience?
Yeah, I think I definitely gained more positive things from it than anything else. Um, which is also why I like that picture too, because it's hard to see probably on the camera, but it's also, yeah, it's blowing away, but it's also a tree. It's growing, it's
Mm,
continuing to grow.
mm,
Um, um, it definitely improved a lot of my personal relationships. Um, it one really interesting one. Well, it improved my relationship with my spouse. I think we can withstand anything after going through what we've been through. One really interesting one was it improved my relationship with my brother, which was not a bad relationship, but we became much closer. He became a really, really good support system for me, which kind of surprised me. I have a brother that's 18 years younger than me. And so we've always had kind of like an uncle nephew kind of relationship. But he's an adult now. And he was a really surprisingly good support system for his age and for never having gone through that before. So that brought us closer. It definitely put a mirror up in front of me, to learn about my own personality and the things I like about my personality, and a lot of things I didn't like about my personality too. And it's sort of, I mean, it's kind of, you're kind of getting, when you go through something like this, you're kind of getting a chance to start over. And you can be whoever you want to be. You know what I mean? Like I kind of, I don't know if this is a productive way to think about it or not, but I sort of look at my life as like before the stroke and after the stroke. And, I kind of got a chance. You can make your life whatever you want it to be. And you can do that at any point in your life. You don't have to experience a stroke for that. But that definitely showed me I'm driving the bus here. I can do whatever I want with this time I've been given.
I completely relate to that. And yet I had to wait till I was 37 and have multiple brain bleeds, and not know my name and not know who my wife was and not be able to type an email, not be able to work, not be able to drive,
Mhm.
have all not be able to walk, not be able to move my left hand, all those things. I had to go through all of that to realize exactly what was definitely possible for us to realize beforehand, but somehow the the profound trigger wasn't there, I suppose. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know how else to explain it. And I definitely am a before stroke guy and an after stroke guy. Absolutely 100%. I mean, the before stroke guy didn't put this much time and effort into other people at all. Zero.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't do that in my family. I didn't do that outside of my family. The before stroke kind of guy had, I felt like I was at the whim of other people's demands on me, requests and etc. And my business was being run by my clients rather than it was being run by me. And the before me guy, although he had a lot, before stroke guy, although he had a lot to say, never had the guts to say it.
Hmm.
And if I did say it, I said it to the wrong audience, and therefore it went down like a lead balloon, and therefore I felt discouraged about speaking up and speaking my mind, and giving people an insight into the things about me that they didn't see on the outside,
Mm-hmm.
And one of the scariest things for me to do was, at the same time that I started this podcast, I started another one, because they were two very different audiences. And the other one kind of took off a bit quicker. And somebody contacted me and gave me really bad feedback, really bad negative feedback. And it put a hold on everything. It,
Mm-hmm.
it made me recoil and then go into this state of freeze and not put anything out there for a while, because I was afraid that people would tell me what I'm doing was no good, or it was my opinion was not worth having out there, or it was going to be challenged, and I didn't know how to deal with any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to say, it took a good year before I really properly got over that and said, no, stuff this, I'm going for it. And I'm going to have these conversations regardless. Now, the other podcast ended after about 20 episodes, and recently I've taken down all proof that it ever existed. It's been a number of years and it's just not me anymore. But then this podcast, when I accepted the possibility that I will be challenged, that I will be um, judged, and I'll be all those things that you do when you put yourself out there. This podcast just took off,
Mm-hmm.
and it was because I enabled myself to be vulnerable and to put myself out there so people can judge and criticize and be harsh towards and whatever. And I thought, well, that I learned somewhere along the line that's says more about them than it does about me.
Absolutely.
And for the first time, it also allowed me to experience different opinions and actually test my very narrow focus and my very narrow range of experiences that created this opinion that I had. And now my opinion has evolved, and my focus has evolved, and my knowledge has evolved. Everything has evolved. It's grown. I'm a better person for it. When you were writing the book, did anything enter your mind to stop you at the beginning from this crazy idea that you had to write a book about stroke, your recovery?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, I was definitely afraid of what, and my book is written in kind of a unique format, which I don't want to go too off on a tangent. I want to answer your question, but yes, a lot of things stopped me because I realized pretty quickly that I had to write about more than just my stroke and my hospitalizations. Otherwise, the book would be completely unreadable. Nobody wants to read 300 pages of this is what I went through and how much it sucked. I don't even want to read that. So I wove I realized pretty quickly, like, that's not going to work. So I wove a lot of flashbacks into the story. So the book kind of jumps back and forth between the present moment, what I was going through when I was writing the book, and past moments in my life. And I sort of tied them together so that each flashback kind of tied into one of the lessons I was learning in the present. But where that comes into the answer to your question is, they're all real people in my life in these flashbacks. It was people that I worked with and people I grew up with and friends and family members. And I thought, I don't necessarily know what they're going to think about me putting this in the book about, and do I want to share that much of my life? And are people going to get where I'm coming from? And so, yeah, absolutely. I wasn't sure whether I was going to publish it or not. And I also, through that whole process, created created a DBA for my business and opened an office. And I decided to name my business Be Here Now also. And when I did that, I was like, is that too much? Like, are people going to get that? Are they going to think that's cheesy or what? And I ultimately, kind of came to the conclusion, like, well, I don't care. Either people are going to get it or they're not going to get it. But like that's where I'm at. That's where my personality is. That's where I'm coming from. And if you're going to engage with me as a business person or just as, as an acquaintance or whatever, you're either going to get it or you're not going to get it. But I'm not going to change who I am to suit everybody else, because no good book was ever written that way.
Absolutely, 100% concur. It's that same feeling that I just spoke about. It's that whole one where as soon as I started putting myself out there and talking about these topics, I position myself as an expert in the field now because I'm the podcast guy that talks about stroke. And it's not, and I'm not an expert, but people see me as that. And they never would have if I didn't have the guts to
Yes.
go down that route and be me and talk about my story and my experiences, because they're my truth and they don't have to be your truth. Your truth's your truth, and we can see where we're different. But what I'd rather see is where we're the same. I would rather see where we're the same, and I would rather be a beacon for encouraging you. Hopefully, somebody's listening to this podcast, right, and going, if that idiot can do it, well, then so can I, you know? And what that's doing is creating an abundance of stroke podcasts so that our community has tons of places to go to and not say the things that we say, which is there was not enough places for me to go to. Because not everybody wants to listen to my version of the Recovery After Stroke podcast, because a lot of people don't get me and they don't want to, and that's perfectly fine. And therefore, we're not competing with each other, which is something I've had to learn again even more recently, because I made a massive error about how I responded to somebody who I thought was trying to manipulate me for their gain. We're not all competing with each other. There's a whole world of people, a whole planet of people. They're in so many different parts of the world. There's 7 billion humans on the planet, and 1 in 4 is going to have a stroke in their lifetime. That's more than enough people to support all our desires to create content for them, or to support them, or to help them, or to sell them a service, or whatever it is, right? It's just that thing that you did. It's like, that's it. That's me. Take it or leave it. And I accept, and I accept whatever decision that you make. And I'm not going to judge you for it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to live my
and
truth.
you are going to get criticism, and I'm going to get criticism. Like you know how you were talking about that, you kind of froze in place after that first experience. And it's not like, oh, if I do this right, I won't get criticism. It doesn't matter how you do it. You're going to get criticism. Some people are going to judge you. And that's just life.
And then you do it anyway. You do it even despite or in spite that whole fact that you will be criticized. You do it anyway. Yeah. So tell me what the titles of the chapters are, and then just give me an idea so that people listening can sort of have a good understanding of what the book's about.
Okay. So let's see. I'm wondering do you want me to read the kind of synopsis on the back? That might help, or do you want me to just go through the chapters? Or
no, if they want to know the synopsis, we're going to send them to your website. But so sorry, people that are listening, you're not going to get it that easy. I want to know just briefly the name of the chapters, and just to give people a good idea of what it's about.
Okay, so chapter 1 is called How It Feels to Quit. Chapter 2 is Blink of an Eye. Chapter 3 is Looking Back, Moving Forward. Chapter 4 is Nobody's Coming to Save You. Chapter 5, When You Don't Recognize Yourself. Chapter 6, When Shit Gets Real. Oops. That's a long one. Chapter 7, It Takes a Village. Chapter 8 is here we go again. Sorry, I didn't have them put a table of contents in here. Chapter 9, second try. Oops. Chapter 10, double vision in video games. Chapter 11, clouds begin to clear. Chapter 12 is haircuts, appointments, and coronavirus. Yeah, my first haircut after the craniotomy, that was an interesting experience.
Yeah, same.
Let's see here. Whoops. Chapter 13, birthdays past and present. Chapter 14, mile 20. That's a marathon reference.
Yeah.
Chapter 15, meaningful gifts. Chapter 16, relationships are hard. That's all about the relationships that maybe did not come closer during the journey. 17, putting the pieces together. And chapter 18 is the last piece, or the last chapter rather, and that is another chance for success.
Yeah. That sounds like an amazing transition, a book that shows the transition from beginning of this, potentially shit story to a really positive outcome, and all the little bumps and all the highs and lows in between. You just said something though during that reading about the first haircut. So I wear my hair really short, so that's a buzz cut, right? And I had a scar that was about 4 or 5 inches long on my head. And then I was kind of gritting my teeth and holding on to dear life when they were buzzing it, and I could feel it in a different way. What was it like for you?
Oh God, it was. I write about it in the book, and I give the guy who cut my hair a lot of credit here. So I was super nervous for a bunch of reasons. So number one, that was right in the middle of the pandemic, and for people who know me, I was a germaphobe before the pandemic. So I was already a germaphobe. I already, carried hand sanitizer with me before coronavirus. So I was scared because of that, because I was like, oh God, I don't want somebody touching my face after they just touched a bunch of other people. My stitches from the craniotomy had not fully healed yet. So I was, and I wear my hair short too. So I was really worried about the stitches. I was worried about like the clippers snagging on it or something. I was still in quite a bit of pain at the time. The guy that cuts my hair, he's a young guy, like a surfer guy, super duper nice, but he's like, he's quite a bit younger, and he's like, hey dude, one of those kind of people. And I was like, oh God, is he going to understand like how delicate I am? So I wrote about it in the book, because the night before the haircut, I almost canceled, because I'm like, I don't really know if I want. So I texted him and I was like, just so you know, I'm really worried about germs. Just so you know, I'm really worried, like my head's still sore, just so you know. And like, I was like, I said to Jeremy, I'm like, oh, he's going to think I'm crazy. So we got there, we got to the shop, and I had, I don't know if you had this, that this whole side of my head was still very numb. And I occasionally I still get nerve pain down the scar or whatever. He could not have been better. He was like super careful and delicate, and he was very careful. But yeah, it was I had nothing to be afraid of. But it was pretty funny, because I was like, oh God, am I going to regret having this haircut?
Yeah, I remember the same experience or similar experience. So I never used to wear my hair like this, and then it started the day before I had the brain surgery. And of course, I knew they were going to cut my hair. So I thought, I'll just do it for them. But what I didn't know was that I should have cut it a lot shorter, because when they trim the area that they're going to do the incision on, they go right down to the skin. Well, my hair was about this long when I went into surgery, which was the first time. And then I had this landing strip here, which they had done. So I had to get my hair cut pretty quickly, because as soon as the bandage came off about 7 days later, I had 2 layers of hair this one
Yeah.
which had grown, and the landing strip which had just grown a little bit, and it looked ridiculous, right? And I already felt a little bit bizarre and strange, and I thought, let me just even out the hair. So I was getting a haircut maybe when I first was allowed to leave the hospital for day release type thing. I was getting my haircut within the first 3 or 4 weeks, the first
Yeah.
month or something like that.
Yeah.
And then at my local regular hairdresser, and she didn't get to cut my hair. That one of the other ladies did, and she was telling the other lady, you know, be careful with the way that
Yeah.
you cut his
Yeah.
hair, and make sure you don't
Yeah.
touch it and ruin it and make it worse or something. And
Yeah.
they were amazing, and they really helped me as well. But
Yeah.
now that time has passed, since that was November 2014 when I had surgery. Now the faint scar is still visible when my hair is really short. And
Yeah.
because they can't see it, that's where the screws are that hold the
Yeah.
bone flap in. And
Right.
some of them go over it really rough with the clippers.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And I've got to kind of uh, either mention it or don't say anything, and just sort of hold on for a few minutes while it happens, and
Yeah.
then just move beyond it.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but it's luckily you can't really see it because there's hair growing over it, but I have like an indent on this side,
Same.
and it's like soft right there, and I don't like being touched. I mean, it's because makes me really nervous. I don't like being touched still. It doesn't hurt anymore, but I don't like being touched on my
Yeah.
head.
And because of the indent, the clippers don't go straight over the top. They've got to get in there.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah,
they
because
really
otherwise you
get
end
in
up it's
there.
all like uneven or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't remember exactly. Yeah. I can, in the right kind of light, I can see where the screws are and stuff. But
Yeah. So they're the real quirky little things that I experienced that uh, a lot of stroke survivors have had brain surgery. Anyone who's had brain surgery can
yeah.
really relate to. And I'm sure some people are cringing and moving like I am, and just can't cope with even the thought of it. Now, the other thing that's done is that's really made it difficult for me to watch those crazy sports like boxing and UFC, which I was a keen fan of beforehand.
Oh, interesting.
I just can't do it now. I can't
Yeah.
bear the thought of somebody getting hit in the head
Yeah.
in any way, shape, or form repetitively, like the way they do in those sports. So I couldn't really grasp the concept of jumping into a ring and to get beat up as a career anyway. But now even more so, it's like, yeah, all power to them. But like, wow, how
Yeah.
do they do that?
It took me a long time to get over. I had a lot of anxiety about crowds afterwards, because particularly crowds where there's children running around, because I was in a lot of pain,
Mm.
and my head was, my head was all swollen and whatever, and I was so afraid that somebody was going to knock into me or knock me over, or I was going to trip over a little kid, or you know what I mean. And I was like, I don't know, I don't want to know what's going to happen if I hit my head, so it took me a long time to get over that fear of going out in public immediately after the surgery.
Yeah, I found myself those probably 2 months after surgery, when I first started going back to do some chores, like pick up some stuff from the mall on my own or whatever, for groceries. I found myself becoming a magnet for people to bump into all the time. It was like, what's happening to me? Why am I attracting so many people to run into me right now when I'm so vulnerable and I don't want my head touched and I don't want to fall over?
Yeah.
It was exactly the same feeling.
Yeah.
And it kind of went away, but it did create that bit of experience of kind of phobia of crowds. That
Yeah.
agoraphobia that people talk about. It was kind of a mild version of that, and
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy it at all. So I would go when it wasn't busy, when it was low numbers of people through there. Mate, it's been a really amazing opportunity for me to get to interview for the second time, especially since so much has happened between the first time and the second time, and you've come so far and you've released this book. Congratulations on the book and getting through and overcoming the obstacles you've overcome so far. And thanks for being on the podcast. I wonder if people are interested in connecting with you and getting a copy of the book, where would they go?
So I'm really easy to find on Instagram. So my Instagram, well, I have two Instagrams. One is just my name at Jason De Petris. And then I have an Instagram called the Be Here Now Collective, which is specifically for the book. So they can find it there in my bio. In the bio, I have a link, the Amazon link to purchase the book. I have had a few people actually reach out to me directly that just saw a post or whatever, send me a DM, which I'm always happy to answer those. So yeah, I mean, I hope that people get something out of it. I hope that there's something positive they get out of it where they can see you can recover. It's not all doom and gloom. I mean, everybody's experience obviously is different, but there are certain things that all of us have in common. And I hope that people see that you can get through this. And I am donating the proceeds to the Brain Aneurysm Foundation. So
yeah, that's really cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
thank you for having me back on again. It was enjoyable. I always learned something, and it was fun to kind of talk through it.
My pleasure. Well, thanks so much for joining us on today's episode. I hope you really enjoyed the chat with Jason and you got a lot out of this episode and maybe learned something. Please comment, like, and share. If you are watching on YouTube, subscribe, hit the notification bell to get updates of new episodes as they become available. The more interactions the episode has, the more the algorithm will push the episode out to people that need to see it, and the greater the impact that Jason and his book will make in the world. Go to recoveryafterstroke.com to check out the show notes and any links to Jason and his website and where you can find the book. Thanks again for being here. I really appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gassiamis. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.